You know Matt Chitty, right?
Yes, we were talking backstage, I want to say.
We go way back.
Matt,
Way back.
like 12, 14 minutes.
Right.
No.
Matt Atchity is with us from Rotten Tomatoes, and he's here with the reviews of the. Now, these are low-profile movies opening this week.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah, but it's all that's opening right now.
Well, and we're in September,
It's that week, right?
so
Yeah.
it's it's the week after Labor Day. It's not a big movie weekend.
Okay, which is worse, to have a movie on Labor Day or to have the weekend after Labor Day?
Probably after Labor Day.
It is.
Probably, at least according to the scores this week.
All right, you're a rotten guy from Rotten Tomatoes. We had
Yes.
Zoe Saldana on. She was lovely,
So sweet.
wonderful.
Very nice, very talented.
You're just going to kill her,
What are you
aren't
gonna do here?
I knew it.
What are you going to do here, Matt?
The movie's not that good.
It's not?
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. So this is The Words. It's a story about Bradley Cooper plays this writer who's got some books in him that he's written. He can't get them published. He stumbles across this manuscript that he copies, and some writers have done that in the past. They'll rewrite somebody else's work.
Plagiarism.
Well, but you'll hear about writers that would rewrite, say, Hemingway to learn how he wrote and find that voice.
As an exercise.
But this one ends up getting published as his work, and he kind of goes along with this lie, and then the original writer may show up, and it's.
Well, we saw Jeremy Irons.
Exactly. So it's a very melodramatic movie, and I don't mean that in a necessarily bad way. It really had me going for a long time, and then in my opinion, it totally falls apart at the end.
See, because you had me too. It sounds like an interesting.
So that's
movie.
you again. We always want to remind folks: Rotten Tomatoes is just not the exercise of what you think.
Right.
It's
my actual personal view don't affect the score at all.
Okay.
Okay, but the chemistry between them.
The chemistry's great, but the critics, for the most part, really don't like this movie, and it's only 24%.
24% fresh, meaning 24% liked it rather than disliked it. Once again, I always say it doesn't mean 24% loved it.
Right.
Okay, they might have liked it.
And so that's definitely rotten on our site.
Now that's rotten, but boy, that is like a home run compared to this next one.
Yeah, the next one, The Cold Light of Day, starring Henry Cavill. We have zeros that come up from time to time, so this is not the lowest, but A Cold Light of Day is a movie that, I'm going to describe this and it's going to sound like frantic. Henry Cavill plays this guy who's on vacation, goes into town off the boat that they're on, comes back, and his whole family's gone, and they've been kidnapped by the government.
All right. I like that. I like that.
He's good, and I hear that Bruce Willis, who's also in this, is pretty good, as is Sigourney Weaver, but the critics are saying that it's a by-the-numbers, kind of not very well-executed action movie. Now, to be clear, there's only about 12 or 13 reviews on the site so far because it wasn't screened for critics. So.
Now, when it's not screened for critics, that's always a problem. That's your first sign.
That's typically not a good sign because in rare cases a movie will end up fresh, but for the most part, the conventional wisdom is you don't hide a decent movie from the critics.
And so when you do hide it, the purpose is try to steal a box office that weekend before the reviews come in. Is that the traditional way of thinking?
That's the tradition. I don't think this movie's going to do that well. It's not opening as wide as The Words.
But I'm going to ask you, certain kinds of movies, the critics have nothing to do with the movie.
There are certain
No
movies
kid
like
going to the movie Friday night is going to read.
Right. Scary movies, slasher movies, typically
I
are
would
like
say
that.
those movies that open huge to the 18 to 34 marketplace, which is the audience, they're not reading the critics.
I would agree with you, although we've seen that with a well-reviewed movie, it'll get a higher per-screen average.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of a correlation. Now, in the bigger blockbusters, it's not as dramatic as you see in, say, the indie films.
Right.
That's where the critics really will move.
Well, that's where you're important, in the indie film, right. All right, so now this thing called Bachelorette, and I got rash thinking it was a TV show.
Speaking of indie films, this is a movie that stars Kirsten Dunst, and it's kind of a story not dissimilar to Bridesmaids, kind of about the craziness that happens with a bachelorette party. Lizzie Kaplan's in it.
Happens at bachelorette.
Isla Fisher's in it. It's about kind of the experience of Kirsten Dunst as a bachelorette and the things that keep going wrong. This is a pretty solid movie according to the critics, 60% on the tomato meter. It's in limited release, but it's also been on video on demand for the last week or so. So this is one of those movies that is out kind of at home on demand as well as in theaters.
Does that help, do you think, a movie sometimes?
I think a movie like this, it does, yes.
And we expected after Bridesmaids 42 movies like this. Have we gotten them yet?
Not yet, but they're going to get made. I think that this was one that was probably in the pipeline and maybe wasn't going to get a big release, but it's getting a slightly bigger release.
Just so you know, when you review a movie, it matters to me.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Good.
Matt is on Rotten Tomatoes Radio Thursdays at 3 on Sirius XM Radio. Give him a listen. Give him a call, okay? Taking calls?
Yes.
Okay, give him a call.
Waiting for you to call?
I'm waiting as soon as I get my...
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
As soon as I get my flip phone fixed.
The block.
Your shoe phone.
He's got the block.
Coming up, Marivette's setting up a huge thing outside. It's a very special weekend roundup. It is the kickoff of our Buddy Holly celebration that runs through tomorrow. Ken Levine, do you know him? Well, if you're a baseball fan, you probably do. Ken Levine has written a wonderful book about growing up in the San Fernando Valley in the 60s. This guy grew up in the 60s, too. Huge crowds expected at the Harvest America Crusade. Pastor Greg Laurie, who grew up in the 60s, lived the 60s. He'll be with us. All coming up here. We'll be back.
You still have your phone in the briefcase?
Yes, I do.